Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on Earth Day 2022. We are very excited to be hosting this discussion today as a joint discussion between the Jamyang Buddhist Center in London and the International Tibet Network, as well as the Tibet climate crisis. So it's a really great opportunity to highlight what's happening in Tibet in terms of the environment and also bring in some different topics of discussion in terms of research and historical and cultural connections between Tibet and its connection to conservation and spirituality and Buddhism, and as well as bringing in some more recent things in terms of campaigns that have to do with Tibet, Tibet's third pole, and a lot of important topics that we're going to get to. So my name is Kunsang, and I am the Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator at the Jamyang Buddhist Center. And I'm going to hand it over to Rashi and Lobsang Yangtso to introduce themselves. So Lobsang Yangtso, if you would like to go first.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Tashi Delek. So I'm Lobsang, and I'm the Program and Environment Desk Coordinator of International Tibet Network. And so right now I'm based here in Dharamsala.
Hi everyone, I'm Rashi. I'm the campaigns coordinator at International Tibet Network and I'm based in London. Nice to meet everyone.
Awesome. So today I think is kind of a really special opportunity because we actually, I really haven't seen them many discussions that really kind of connect these two areas when we talk about climate justice and we talk about Tibet. And also for my work at Jamyang, we talk a lot about spiritual practice and things that we can do in our everyday lives to kind of help and do our part in terms of um, saving the planet and everything. So I think this is a really great opportunity. So I'm going to hand it over to Lobsang Yangtso, who is going to give us some great background about Tibet and its climate.
Thank you, Kusang. So when we talk about Tibet, I think it's very crucial that everyone knows that first and foremost is that Tibet is under occupation, and so we also have to understand that the Chinese occupation of Tibet is the root cause of climate or environment mismanagement in Tibet. And having said that, so right now, because of the climate change and because of the man-made, activities or Chinese government's policy, we see and we have witnessed a huge number of environment disasters and environment problems in Tibet, such as the melting of glaciers or melting of permafrost, and then grassland degradation as well. And then, and so when we look at that, so why Tibet is, facing such kind of problem is that first, Tibet is also the front line of global climate crisis, which means that as compared to the global average temperature, Tibet is warming 2 to 3 times faster than the rest of the world. And because of that warming, the glaciers are melting very, very fast and drastically, and that will leave impact on the water, the river sources that flows from Tibet to the downstream nations, and almost like 1.4 billion Asian populations are dependent on the water that flows from Tibet. But right now, what I felt is that when we talk about climate change, people who are most affected by the climate change are the least contributed in greenhouse gas. And when it comes to Tibet, the real problem is that uh, when we look from the global climate discussion, Tibetans are officially not represented in the UN climate discussions. So Tibetans are also ignored in climate policy making and also climate policy implementation. So why that is so? Because of the colonialism and the climate crisis that we face. And because of that, then we have a huge responsibility, and we also, everyone also have a huge responsibility and action. And then because of that, collaboration and the exchange of research and collaboration work is very important when it comes to climate crisis in Tibet. And having said that, another issue that I think we need to focus is that what happens in Tibet is that Tibetan people, the local Tibetan people, are excluded in the policy making, and their traditional knowledge or traditional practices of environment protection and environment conservation is completely ignored in terms of climate change policy making. And so secondly, when it comes to climate justice or people who work for the climate, the environment defenders or environmentalists, so when they come out and then talk about climate change, so they end up in prison and they are politicized by the Chinese government. And so they faced lots of difficult situations, not only to them and also to their family members. So these are the problems that we have. And so, I mean, we being based outside Tibet and in exile, I feel that it's really, really difficult, to work on the Tibet climate crisis. But then what we try to do is try to build campaigns and have our coordinated campaigns with the Tibet groups. And so, having said that, Tibetan inside Tibet, in Tibet, are really, working really hard, and then they work really inspire personally to me. And so, when we look at their work, the Pön religion and also the Buddhism has really influenced on their environment conservation and they practices as well. Because even though, I mean, when we at current level, even though they don't speak or they don't use the the modern jargon, climate crisis word or the scientific terms, but then the practice of environment protection or the practice of environment conservation has been always in the Tibetan community historically. So that means that they have knowledge and they have also a right to protect their land, but then that is completely negated in Tibet. And so with that, what I feel is that we not being not part in the whole global discussion, it's a very difficult and very challenging. But I think that uh, and today, being the Earth Day, everyone has a responsibility. And so, first and foremost, creating awareness about Tibet climate crisis and then educating yourself is really, really important. And then also, protection of environment, and then protecting the water, protecting the forests, and planting trees is a great initiative that everyone can take nowadays. And so that will we hope that that will bring some changes. And even within our Tibetan community, I feel that we still lack human resources and the fundings, the resources to the people who or the to the organizations who work on environment issues. So I think we need to also focus on that. And then I think I'll end here, and I hope we will have more discussions later.
Great. Thank you so much. Um, that was really great. So now I think we're going to move on to Rashi, who's going to share with us some of the ongoing campaigns and things that are happening at ITN and with Tibet Third Pole, Tibet Climate Crisis. So if you want to just take it from here, Rashi.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've had Tibet Climate Crisis as a campaign for a while now, and all key Tibet groups across the world are prioritizing it this year. I mean, we did it last year as well with COP26, and with COP27 coming up in Egypt this year. It's again a priority. It is a campaign that is going to remain the main focus for a while. And the overarching goal of the campaign is to raise global awareness around Tibet climate crisis in occupied Tibet, and to have Tibetan voices highlight the significance of the climate crisis narrative. I think, like Lobsang said, there are a lot of issues, whether it's damming, whether it's mining, whether it's nomad resettlement. All of these are crucial issues that I think people need to educate themselves on. And the reason we're saying that is because when you educate yourself and when you go and read up about it, you can then go on and educate other people. Like, for example, the Chinese authorities have resettled to around about 2 million nomads in the last couple of years, and these Tibetan nomads have been living on the grasslands for millennia, and they are like proud, resilient people, and now they've been moved from these grasslands. And that has an impact on the biodiversity of the region as well. And the reason that they're doing it, the Chinese authorities have been doing it, is to build national parks and reserves for, it's for the glorification of the landscape for Chinese tourists. So that's something that we will be focusing on. Nomad resettlement is one of them, and the second is, um, I mean, it really bothers me when people say, be the voice for Tibetans in Tibet. But Tibetans in Tibet have a voice and they have been screaming. We have Anya Sendra, we have Karma Samdup, who are environmentalists and activists, and they have been taking action. So Tibetans in Tibet don't need us, by us I mean non-Tibetans, to be their voice. They already have a voice. What we need to do is amplify it. So if you have the privilege, and if you have the freedom to use your voice, then use it to amplify the voices of Tibetan activists in Tibet. Anya Sengra is there, Karma Samdrup is there. There are so many other people who have been putting their lives on the line. So go on tibetclimatecrisis.org. There are petitions that you can share. There are resources that you can share. And there's a lot of potential to do with this campaign, with so many targets that we have. So it's definitely something that people should be focusing on, educating themselves, and so that they can educate others.
Great, thank you. And I know for everyone who's joining us live on our different platforms, if you have any questions, we don't have to wait until the end. If you have questions and you want to just type them into the comments area, we'll see them and we can ask them at the end. You don't have to wait, so you can just start chatting now. You can add questions in the comment box. But I think I'll start by going back to Lobsang Yangtso, and I think it's interesting that you mentioned that the Tibetans inside of Tibet who are like you're saying are historically are conservationist, and I know the last time I saw you in person was right after COP26, and we had this whole discussion about how um, the efforts for conservation and essentially like I guess what you're saying is that they don't call it activism, they don't call it being a part of the movement, environmental movement necessarily, but it's something that is what seems to me as inherently a part of everything that they do, the consciousness about care for the planet and being a part of their cultural upbringing. And could you talk a little bit more about the impact of Buddhist culture or Bon culture or the philosophy that influences people. Because I know, you mentioned to me that you're from a lot from Tibet, from these areas, and you have family members who are nomadic people and have this relationship with the land, which I think is really special. So could you like elaborate a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, so I think in our community, so we have this, and a belief of a sacred mountain and sacred lake and or sacred rivers, right? So this has been really, a belief system that has been there for like thousands of years, which is like influenced both by Pune religion and the Buddhism as well. So with that, so when we say sacred mountains or sacred rivers, so what we mean, it means is that the these mountains and these rivers are not there to be exploited, which is right now happening in Tibet. And so every year, the Tibetans, we during the auspicious days or during the New Year's, we go up on the mountain and then we worship that. But right now, what happened in reality is that because of the loss of Chinese tourists, so they go up there, they pollute, and then when I went home to visit my hometown Payu, mm, what I saw is that so many waste and so many garbage has been thrown in the river or on the mountains, and that's like really really sad to see that. And I think in that, I think the grassroots organizations and every individual over there has a huge responsibility to not to pollute the land, the land. And then in terms of the Buddhist concept of interdependence, and the that has also shaped in terms of the many Tibetans in the environment protection, saying that we human beings are interdependent with the nature, and if we pollute the nature, so that will also impact our life and then the animals around us. So that concept is really important. And whenever we read or study any of the environmentalist they work, so almost everyone said that I am very much influenced by the Pune or the Buddhism religion, and so it's in our culture, and so it's my responsibility to protect land. And actually, now because of the modernization or the colonialism, so everyone feels that nature is something that you have to exploit, or nature is something that you have to conquer. So which is completely against, because right now everyone also says that time is running out and we have to protect. And so I think we really have to think over that, and then really bring changes in our lifestyle as well. And then other part is that even historically during 13 Dalai Lama, during that time, the Tibet already had the policies, the government policies in terms of environment protection. And in Tibetan language it says Rilung Tsatsik, where the government officials or the villagers, they tell the people to not to pollute, or not to exploit natural resources, or not to pollute the nature, and then protect. And especially in the month of Sakadawa, which is like auspicious month for the Buddhism to practice. And during that time, people also being careful not to go on the mountains or to pollute. So these practices has been there for really long. And another example is the nomad, right? I mean, earlier Russia has also talked about nomads relocation, and nomads has been living on their own land for thousands of years. But right now, because of the Chinese occupation, the China thinks that nomad is the root cause of environment destruction, or the grassland destruction that is happening on the Tibetan plateau. And then they say that the policy of poverty elevation, saying that nomadic way of life is very barbaric and very poor. So they have they have practiced the policy of forceful nomadic relocation, and that is completely, going against the nature, going against the will of the people, right? And that also says that nomadic people are not included in the policy making, and they were never consulted in their policy. And so the policies that we see in Tibet is always the top down. It's the government who force the policy, and the policy has never been the from the grassroots, and then having a consulting with them, and then put forwarding the policies. So I think right now we are in a very critical situation, and as I said also earlier, Tibet being an occupied nation, and it's very difficult for whole this struggle. And I personally feel that unless until the political, we don't have a political solution in Tibet, the environment destruction in Tibet will continue. And so I think, and the second is that in a global discussion, there is no official representation of Tibetans are never consulted in the IPCC report, the UN climate change report, right? Tibetans are never included in the UN climate change conference, the so-called the COP26 or COP27. So these are the challenges that we have. And but then people who are inside Tibet, they are sacrificing their lives, and they are continuously working for the environment conservation. And especially I feel that the monasteries and the religious leaders are taking a huge responsibility in terms of protecting the environment. And I think that's a really great initiative. And afforestation has been going really wide inside Tibet. And in terms of tree plantation, I feel that the Chinese government also has a the policy of afforestation. So that's a good initiative. And that's a good initiative. And so because they realize that because of the flooding, the kind of natural disaster that we see, they realize that protecting the forest and the trees are important. So such kind of policies should be carry inside Tibet. And so since we already have this rich our culture and our tradition and our religious practices, so we don't have to rely on the Western concept of environment preservation. We already have that knowledge with ourselves. And so the government should allow the Tibetans to protect their land. And then global community also should recognize the significance and the rich traditional knowledge or rich religious practices that Tibetans have. And so that is I think another solution of protecting Tibet, and also the whole Asia, the billions of people who are independent, their livelihood for all the rivers that flow from Tibet. And so it's all interdependence. So I mean, we see all the natural disasters, right? So no one can escape from that. So yeah, so that's the reality. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. So I think that that's a great way of explaining a lot of the ways that it is connected. So I think at this point, maybe we could, again, everyone who's watching live, if you would like to send us a question for Rashi or Lobsang Yangtso, please pop it in the comments. And I think I will start with a question for Rashi. Rashi, what ways can we connect Tibet with the overall climate movement? So like what ways, and I've also thought about this a lot too, like thinking about the climate justice and the movement, and also having been to COP26 and seeing another climate justice protests. And sometimes when you go with like a contingent of people to join these protests, like what are some other ways that we can sort of either like insert Tibet into the larger narrative of the climate movement, or maybe in a smaller way, or what kind of ways do you think that we could do that on a practical level?
Um, yeah, that's a great question. So, just to add something to what Lobsang was saying before, it's really all interconnected. I think um, climate action, when you think about taking climate action, whether it's especially in case of Tibet, climate action is political action, and political action is climate action. They are so interconnected. Just because Tibet is an occupied country, um, Tibetans in Tibet and Tibetans in exile have been pushing to safeguard nomadic rights, to stop damming, to stop mining. So I think way that people can help out is by first highlight the significance of Tibetan climate crisis. I think Tibet is at the front line of the climate crisis. Like Lobsang said, we are losing um, where heat losing ice at 3 times faster than the global average. So the rising temperatures, the melting of the permafrost, it's a climate feedback loop. Humans release carbon dioxide, the earth gets hotter, then the tundra thaws, then more carbon dioxide and methane is released, then the earth gets hotter again, the Arctic sea melts, the dark sea water absorbs sunlight, and the earth gets hotter. And it's such a vicious loop that by by being a part of it, the one thing that you can do is talk about it and to educate yourself and make sure that you're raising Tibet in these conversations. And there is already an existing global climate movement. So by taking part in conferences and AGMs of Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth, or taking part in protests by Fridays for Future or Extinction Rebellion, there are already all these platforms that exist. um, but if you don't have the resources to start your own chapter, go join them, talk about Tibet there. And the other thing that you can do is find a Tibet group in your country, in your city. There are so many of them. Tibet Network website has you can see it on the map. You can go and see where nearest Tibet group is. Most of them are running campaigns of Tibet climate crisis. If they're not, please feel free to reach out to us. We can help start and provide materials for it. Um, that's something that you can do. And the second, and I think the most important thing, and that's something that Lobsang also said, that in COP26 and COP27 that's coming up, Tibetans are not there on the panel. They're not deciding policies. So raise Tibetans as the solution. Make sure that you're using your privilege to talk about that. And this is all because of colonization. We've seen it with Native Americans in the US, we've seen it First Nations within Canada. That's exactly the same thing that's happening now in 21st century, in 2022, in Tibet. China has colonized Tibet, and they are pushing out people who are from that land for profits. So make sure you talk about that, and make sure you raise Tibetans as solution seekers. They've, like Lobsang said, they have historically been protectors of the land, and that's right there is the solution. So their voices matter, and their voices matter most when you talk about climate solutions.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, so kind of piggybacking off of that a little bit, we have another question, which I guess either of you could answer. How has the Chinese government's climate policy changed over time? Has there been any movement at all in recent years? Thanks, Kamla.
Yeah. Yeah. I think before going on the climate policy, I would also add on few things that Rashi discussed earlier. So so how can an individual be part of the whole Tibet climate movement, right? So one, I feel that it's very important for our youths to take interest on that and to take participate on that. When we look at the whole global climate movement, we have seen the young people coming on a stage and raising voices and asking questions. to the governments or the policy makers, right? So I think that the youth in our community also, I mean, should that responsibility. And yes, I mean, I have seen recently, many young people, Tibetan people, or the Tibet support groups. They come and they take part in the whole global movement, but we still need more. And uh, the whole the climate movement is something that everyone can participate, and everyone should take a responsibility in that. And the second is that right now social media is there, and the younger generations are really good in social media, and we have to take advantage of that, and then spread the information, or they create awareness. And so I think every individual, whether you being in a school, or whether you are an artist, or whether you are a singer, or whether you are a filmmaker, or writer, so everyone can really pay attention on the Tibet climate crisis, and then do a small part from yourself. And the second thing, in exile, or also in Tibet, I would like to say that uh, education is really important, and especially in the schools. I feel that we should definitely have a specific compulsory subject on environment and Tibet climate crisis, and then teach the young kids about the whole uh, Tibet's environment historically, the natural resources, the landscape, and the kind of the challenges that we face, and how we can face those challenges, and what are the solutions. So that has been really, I feel, that included in the school curriculum, and then students, the young students can participate and then educate themselves, and then slowly, because the younger generations would be the most affected once they grow up, right? I mean, right now the kind of destruction that we see in Tibet, once the Tibet the movement, the problem resolved, I think that everyone wants to go back to Tibet. And even me, right? I don't want to be stay here in India as an refugee, or in exile forever. So I also wish to go back to my homeland, right? So when I go back there, I want to have a clean air. I want to have a clean water, and where you can just drink water from the river flowing, but and then the clean land, and then the whole grassland and the glaciers. So we want that kind of thing, and so just to have that. And so I think the younger generations should really take initiatives, and awareness on that. And then coming to the government policies. So when we say Chinese government policies, the problem is that one is implementation, right? When we look in the Chinese government's policies in paper, it looks really good. But then the implementation is different at the different level, because when the policy implementation comes, the local government has the most power to implement, and the local government sometimes they really prefer economic development when as compared to the environment protection. So that is one problem, where the local governments they hardly have any incentive in terms of protecting the environment. So that is one limitation in the Chinese environment policies in Tibet. The second, as I mentioned earlier, the policies are the top-down policies, right? Local Tibetans are not really included in the policy making, and because of those such cases, that when the Tibetans, when they come out and protest or raise voices against the mining, so what happens? We everyone's have witnessed that, right? The whole paramilitary comes over there, and then they don't have that space to raise their voice and raise concern of their own land. So that's the real situation in Tibet. And so, and the third thing about the environment policy is that sometimes, I mean, in terms of the one positive point that I would like to raise here is the afforestation. Afforestation is there, but then the kind of infrastructure that we see in Tibet it's so huge, right? And the Tibetan land itself, the Tibetan plateau is very, very fragile, and it's very sensitive towards the climate crisis and the climate change, and that has to understand by the policymakers. And the kind of the infrastructure development, the mining, and the railway, and the airports, sometimes these are not there for the Tibetan people. These policies, these economic developments, are they inside Tibet to control or to rule the people, right? So that's what we have to understand, that because I think for them, for the Chinese government, they think that money or the economic development is the solution for all the problems that inside Tibet. But Tibetan people are not happy about that, because the kind of self-immolations that we have seen recently, and for the past years, the young Tibetan, the artist Tsawang Nupu is a very recent case, right? And he has not seen the free Tibet. Earlier, he has not seen the 1959 Chinese occupation. He has not seen the uprising in 1989 as well. But then he has been, in his personal life, he has been really doing well in his career, but he self-immolated for Tibet. So there must be some reason why Tibetans are sacrificing their land. And this really clearly shows the kind of policies that we see. And the two recent self-immolations, we hardly have information or the real condition or any of the footage. And the kind of restrictions that China has put is it's terrible. And but because of the global political crisis and the kind of problems that we see all over, so the Tibet issue gets neglected. And yeah, so it's sometimes very, very difficult. But I think the hope is the only way. And so we should continue, and then carry forward the whole movement. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So I know I have some other questions, which either of you actually could answer, but um, why, why should someone who cares about the environment care about Tibet? Because I know that we all are a little bit biased in the reasons why we care about Tibet and its environment, but do either of you obviously have some thoughts about why it matters for everybody? I think that you both kind of mentioned it a bit, but for people who are just joining, maybe, it could be worth saying again, like, why is it important for people who care about the environment, people who are already sort of tapped into the environmental movement, to also pay attention to what's happening in Tibet, and how it might also affect them, even if they don't live anywhere in Asia, if they don't live anywhere near Tibet? Um, do you guys have any thoughts about why there's so much importance about why we stress that it is important for everybody to pay attention?
I mean, I let Lobsang answer it as a policy question, because Tibet is at the front line of the climate crisis, because Tibet is warming 3 times faster than the rest of the world. Because if you say that you want to take climate action, because if you say that you care about the environment, it cannot be independent of Tibet. It has to include Tibet. Um, like we talk about the glacier meltdown in the Arctic region, Tibet is an issue. Tibet has been an issue for decades. And the reason that it hasn't been mainstream is because of China, because it has taken so long to get the information out, because it's taken so long to any trickle of information that we get, it takes forever to verify it. In terms of climate experts in the Tibetan, who are Tibetan, Lobsang is there, right? So the reason to care is because it's at the front line, and you cannot say that you care about the environment, and you cannot say that you care about climate action without prioritizing Tibet, because it is what it is. It's heating 3 times faster than the rest of the world. And so I don't even know where to begin, because to me, in my head, climate action is equal to Tibet climate crisis. They are not independent of each other. I don't see them as two separate issues. It's something like saying, like, I care about the environment, but I don't care about the glacier meltdown, because that is where we started, or the ozone melt, the ozone holes, because that's where the climate movement started. um Tibet climate crisis is the climate movement, is the climate issue to talk about. It is at the front line. But Lobsang can be more, you know, uh, detailed about it, because yeah, it's, as a campaigner, it gets me really um, anxious when people don't connect those two, because for me they are one and the same.
Yeah, I mean, to add a little bit on that, so there is this saying that, uh, I mean, injustice somewhere is injustice everywhere. And I think it's all interconnected. And suppose when we talk about India, right? I mean, India shares a border with the Tibet, and right now, because of the climate change and because of the global warming, because of the glacier melting, the river sources uh, of all the major rivers that flow in India, it comes from Tibet, and so the Indians also have a huge responsibility to raise voice on that. With the case of Brahmaputra, it flows from Tibet, and when it flows from Tibet, it is called Yalungtsangbo, and then when it flows in Assam and Arunachal, it's called Sian River, and then it's the international name is Brahmaputra. And Chinese government is building dams on that. But the kind of responses that we see from the Indian officials, Indian government, is very different from the grassroots environment defenders from like Assam or Arunachal. And I think that when we have a climate crisis in Tibet, this will definitely have an impact on the in India, the people in Assam, the people in Arunachal, and also in Bangladesh, right? So you can't say that this is not my issue, or this is their issue. I mean, it's all interconnected. And so I think the downstream nations like Mekong, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, they also have an impact, and they are also facing a critical situation because of the water that flows from Tibet, the Mekong River. So I feel that in this, there should be alliance of the downstream nation, and have a honest conversation with the Chinese government, and then make China accountable for what they are doing, and make China have sign a water treaty or water agreement with the downstream nations, right? So I think that is still lacking, and so there is lots of scope or lots of spaces where the whole people and the governments should come together, and then I mean protect and save your people. It's not only about Tibet. I mean, Tibet's environment crisis is also about Asia's food and water security challenge. So that's the reason why, they I mean, everyone should work together, and they should be a solidarity, and they why they I mean, that's why we need collaboration, and I mean, solidarity with all the downstream nations, and then understand the whole issue. And then I think I think so it's not only about Tibet, as I said earlier. So yeah.
Great, thank you. I also had another question sort of building off of that is in terms of Chinese policy and infrastructure and changes that are being made economically, which are actually impacting Tibet's environment. Like, for example, the road building or infrastructure around sacred sites or sacred Buddhist sites, like, for example, Amimachen. Could you talk a little bit more about that, about how it kind of has impacted over the years?
So in 2000s, the early 2000s, the Chinese government has introduced a policy called Western Development Campaign. So this campaign was introduced because in before 2000, the much of the economic development has been emphasized on the coastal area of the Chinese region, and then they realized that we have kind of ignored the Western region, and then they introduced a so-called Western Development Campaign. And in this Western Development Campaign, so they one of the major uh, policy is infrastructure development and urbanization. And so now, because of these policies in Tibet, that is, we see lots of environment destruction and the kind of road constructions which are unnecessary, which are unnecessary. As I said earlier, the Tibet land is very fragile, and in fact, I mean, the number of population that we have in Tibet, the Tibetan population is very small, but we have a huge landscape, right? We huge landmass, and so for them, it's a mentality of a colonizer. We're saying that we have to beautify the whole Tibetan land, and so that beautification has to be consumed by the Chinese nationals, or the outside tourists. So without really recognizing or appreciating or understanding the sacred land and the sacred sites like Amemache, so they create these kind of infrastructures, and then destroying the whole the nature, I mean, whole the sacred land over there. And what happens is that when the large number of tourists come over there, then they create pollution, and they throw the garbage everywhere, right? But sometimes there is also a way that the sometimes we also feel that maybe if there is a little bit of I mean, tourism, so that might also generate employment for the local Tibetan people, right? But I think that has to understand, and that has to really study, and really allow the local Tibetans their voice in that decision making. And so that's one part. And the creating unnecessary roads is very problematic. And sometimes what happens when it comes to mining, so they would just come and they would do a mining on a sacred mountain or a land. And so when that happens, the local Tibetans are not allowed to see what's happening there. They were not provided any information whatsoever that they are doing in that place. And then once the mining completes, then they build a dam on a huge tunnel, or they build, sorry, they build a road on that, and then saying that we are bringing economic development, infrastructure development, urbanization on their land. So but then sometimes I mean, they do mining over there. And then sometimes I mean, it's all about, once they do the mining, then they would just leave the the whole site there and not really working out and protecting the land. So these are so many problems that we see in Tibet. And then one also the road construction, sometimes for the Chinese political the thinking, I mean the protecting the whole border is very important for the Chinese mainland country to save their own land, save their own country, because of their sharing, having a border with the India or border with other neighboring countries. So for them, the road construction on the Tibetan border area or the inland allows them to easily control, or whenever some uprising or a protest happen, so they could easily send the whole the armies over there to control. So I think it's very important to understand the whole situation, and then every cases is different in every village, and thus I feel that we need more transparency, and we need more open access to the whole region, and then allow the scientific research, or allow the researchers to come and then understand, and then allow them to do a research. So that is also lacking right now in Tibet.
Great. And also today, or the past few days in Dharamsala, I know that you've been a part of this dialogue for the future, or dialogue for future. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then also, I know that earlier this morning, some of the delegates from the conference had an audience with His Holiness on Earth Day, and I was just wondering if His Holiness had anything in particular to say that was more hopeful, and about mentioning any kind of ideas about solutions, or something along those lines that you want to share.
Yeah, so the conference, the Dialogue for Our Future, is happening right now in Dharamsala, and so where many scholars have come here in Dharamsala, and then discussing about the whole global climate crisis, and then also we have a special panel on third pole or Tibet, and so this conference is organized by the International Campaign for Tibet, TPI, Tibet Policy Institute, the Czech Tibet Support, and then URAC Research from Italy. And so this morning, we were very fortunate to have an audience with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And I feel so blessed. And so one thing that His Holiness kept saying was that it's very important to preserve or protect our environment in Tibet, especially the water. So he kept emphasizing on the protecting the nature, and specifically on a water, saying that it's not only about the Tibetan people, but also the billions of people living downstream. And then the second thing he emphasized emphasis on in terms of education, and how important it is to educate ourselves in terms of the environment challenges that we have. And then he also emphasized on compassion, how compassion and love is related when it comes to protecting our environment, and how we are interdependent with each other, with the nature. And so thus it's the responsibility of whole global community to protect our planet. And so it was a wonderful. And so His Holiness has been he has been the always the main motivator, and the role model. And he has really for a long time emphasized and discussed about protecting the environment, and how important the environment is for everyone. And so his message has also touched many of the non-Tibetans who have come here. And so I think we should really follow what His Holiness set. And yeah, so I think today's this morning's audience with His Holiness went really well, and that really personally for me inspired me a lot.
Great. That's so wonderful. Just as we're starting to wrap up a little bit, I just wanted to ask Rashi if you could share some resources that with everyone of where we could tap in different ways to get involved with the movement or get involved with Tibet climate crisis. So if you could just share a couple of things, how people can get involved today.
Yeah, thanks. So we'll pop the website on the screen right now, but you can head on to Tibet Climate Crisis, and on that we have infographics, we have placards, we have petitions, we have sample letters that you can write to your representatives. Basically, we have an entire Google Drive filled with resources. We have videos, we have images that you can share. But if you were to take 5 actions just today, I would suggest join a Tibet group. And talk about Tibet climate crisis. If it's not a priority campaign, please let us know and we will help you set it up. The second thing would be, like Lobsang said, spread the word. Social media is the place to go right now. So use the resources, use the images. There are talking points there. Create tweets. Use the hashtag Tibet climate crisis, and really plug it in. Today we're talking about on hashtag Earth Day 22, climate crisis, climate action, climate strike now. All of these are like hashtags that people use. So plug into them, listen to them, and see what people are talking about and see where Tibet applies. The third thing you can do is go on strike for Tibet climate crisis. So take one of the placards. Fridays for Future has strikes every Friday in different cities of on the world, and they have an interactive map on their website. You can go see where the protest is happening and go talk to other climate activists about Tibet climate crisis. The fourth thing that you can do is write a letter to your representative to tell them about Tibet, tell them what's happening. And we have all the, we have a list of, we have like sample letters that you can use as well as, jumping off points. And the fifth, and I think, depending upon your capacity, if these are actions that you can take, I would also suggest, maybe if you want to support activists and climate experts like Lobsang, you can go and donate, set up a monthly donation with Tibet climate crisis, just so that, like, Lobsang can go on and research and keep doing the work that she's doing, because honestly, we don't have enough climate experts in exile who are talking about Tibet as a frontline issue. And Lupsang is doing that, and she is absolutely brilliant. And we kind of need to amplify these voices, and we need to amplify the voices of Anya Sendra and Karma Samrup. So go sign the petitions, share that on social media, and tell other people what's happening in Tibet, because we really, really need to do that.
Great, thank you. So that's pretty much our time. So thank you so much to Lobsang Yangtso, Rashi. Thank you to everyone who have joined us for this past hour. I think it's sort of goes without saying that this is it's a nice moment in the day as we all think about Earth Day, as we think about what we can do for the planet in our own way, how we can educate ourselves more, what kind of resources are available, um, and how, we have like a handful of sort of Tibet climate crisis experts, but we need like a dozen or 2 dozen Lobsang Yangtsos. We need we need lots of people who have expertise on the topic and figure out ways that we could support them or support campaigns in any capacity is great. And these are all very feasible actions and well within our reach. And again, like, I hope that we could do more of these conversations moving forwards. And I just want to say thank you again, like on behalf of Jamyang Buddhist Center, and thank you to ITN for doing this. And I think we're going to actually close with a very wonderful message from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, that he recorded. There's a video of His Holiness from last year's Earth Day, which is about why it's important to save the planet and to think about this Earth that we live on. So thank you again for joining us, and we will close with that video. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
This blue planet is only our home. Next 1 decade or 2 decades, I will go. On moon also some water, but we try to settle there, impossible. Mars, these stars remain in the sky, in blue sky. It's nice. If we go there, impossible. In India, vegetarianism in 1,000 years. In the West, you see, too much eat meat. Not only is it a question of a sense of sort of love these animals, but itself, you see, very bad for ecology. Of course, we Tibetan also a non-vegetarian, but we decided most of our monastic institution now stop serving meat. For health viewpoint also, vegetarian is very, very suitable, very good. Coming generation, they should think the pleasant planet, blue planet, is only our home.